got nothing to lose. It's still going to be my child, and so success rate is much higher with using a donor egg than his wife's own eggs. So let's we'll get more for our money. However, there are also very often situations where a wife can feel that she wants to move on and use a donor egg. For a couple of, often in a situation where a wife has gone through a couple of IVF cycles, they're physically and emotionally very difficult, especially if you have a couple of failures. And, the woman feels, I can't deal with another, failure again. And she's ready to really have a family. So this is, so she feels, well, let's move ahead and let's use a donor that will increase our chances of, having a successful pregnancy. Then, your personal and family history can influence your decision if you would prefer to use a donor egg or not. You and your husband or partner come from very different, histories and personal, and family backgrounds. So if you had adoption in your family, or if you had divorce and then blended families, that certainly will influence or may influence your readiness to accept and embrace the whole idea of using an egg donor and not having genetic connection to the child. And finally, and probably the most important issue here is actually loss and grief. And in order for someone, I guess for both, husband and, intended parents, is they really need to grieve and the loss of genetic connection of their potential biological child. And the more you can do that, the more you can really process and resolve your grief, the more you can deal with your anger and regret and sadness, the more you will be able to embrace the process of using an egg donor to start a family. Well, let's think about, practically how to choose. How can you, choose a donor? Well, they're known and anonymous donors, and we'll talk about that in a minute. They're actually donor agencies, in-house and independent donor agencies. And, and we'll talk about that in a moment. And, for all donors, they actually have to go through medical and psychological, screening. There are very strict guidelines, by American Society of Reproductive Medicine, for both medical and psychological, screening that they have to go through. And but for recipient parents, which would be, couples who are trying to, have family with donor egg, they go for one-time psychological consultation, which is, completely informational in nature, to cover issues that most often come, if you want to have family using a donor egg. Okay, let's think about, there are two ways you can recruit your donor. They're in-house donor programs or they're independent donor agency. In-house, for example, FSH has, we have our own donor program, and you on the left-hand side, is example of the questionnaire, online questionnaire. It starts with a brief screening survey that every donor has to take. So if she passes this, brief survey, she will be invited to a very, detailed, medical exam, and also, more detailed, questionnaire about her medical history. And she also goes to see a psychologist for psychological evaluation. On the right-hand side, you can see a donor profile. I think right now we have around more than 50 profiles. So you'll have a picture, and you'll have pretty basic information about her physical appearance, age, height, weight, if she had children or not, if she was a donor before. So it's fairly general, information. There, you can you choose either in-house donor or a donor from an outside agency. I don't think that there are a significant. I guess the major difference would be that you can at least for our donor program we follow very strict guidelines for medical and psychological evaluation, and it may be somewhat cheaper. But if you for whatever reason, if you find that the selection is not good enough or sufficient for you, often this is the case if you need like a donor of a particular ethnic background, for example, Asian donors, you may need to look or find a donor from an independent agency. And now what we can do is that actually talk about, differences between known and anonymous donors. So anonymous donor, it would be someone that you would, find through an agency. And a known donor would be your sister, cousin, friend, so someone that you know. You may have, you certainly have a prior relationship with a donor. And let's think about now pros and cons about kind of like one versus another. For anonymous donor, pros are that you have very clear boundaries set with a donor from the beginning. Parents report, they have privacy with their life, and it's so much easier for them to establish themselves as parents from the beginning until from the beginning of the process. That from the time a donor completed her part, which is donation, they feel there's no one else in the picture; it's only them. Disadvantage of using anonymous donor is that you have to really rely on her report or her presentation of her medical history. So theoretically there could be she may not be fully honest. Also, anonymous donor may engage into numerous donations. According to ASRM guidelines, donors should not donate more than 6 times, so it's really limited. But that certainly increases the chance of your child having have genetic siblings out there. If we compare known to anonymous as donor and kind of like look at like what are the pros and what are the cons now of known donors, pros about known donor is that you have either same or similar or at least known genetic background. So if it's your sister, then you really have, you may have a lot of similarity. And I think, also you may feel that it's easier for you to relate to the child or connect to the child. However, there are significant cons, about using a known donor. It may complicate future relationship with a donor. Also, even if you go through the process but you don't get pregnant, there could be, that will affect or may affect your relationship with your donor. Also, parents report that it's hard for them to establish themselves as parents because the donor is always around. So you have to see, will this work for you? If you have, can you imagine how is that going to be like for you if you have